15, I'd like to call the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Can I get a motion?
So moved to accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion been made by Mike, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That was me and Mark.
Motion carried. Approval of the June 3rd meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion been made by John, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment?
Public stay silent.
All right, move on to the PC and Cell IT agreement. Chad?
In your packet, there is a letter from Keith Gowdy, who is in the audience, if we have any questions, from PC and Cell Solutions. Keith brought to my attention last week that, his contract expires in a couple of days when we talk. So Keith gave me a updated quote for continued service for technology support for the city. They don't have the current ones, but in your packet, but normal support, he's proposing to go to $88 an hour. The current contract shows $84.15 an hour, so it's $84.15 to $88 an hour. After hour support currently is $99 an hour plus $60 travel charge. That proposal is going up to $110. Remote services current is $63.75 going up to $68, and then the rush service proposal is to stay the same at $30. As Keith indicated in his letter, obviously inflation and things have gone up, so he is forced to kind of bring his prices up slightly. And then he stated in here that he is proposing that our rates are still 20% off his normal store rates because of our because he likes us, right?
Volume discount.
There you go, volume discount. So this would need to go to a recommendation to council to move forward. The council or the committee did talk about this last August. So if this sounds familiar, we did talk about this last August at the finance committee level, but it never made its way to the council for a contract approval. I can't say why. I just don't think that the contract was actually there to bring to the council floor. So we're fixing that right now to kind of bring this to the council floor. You'll see the quote here, but I will make sure that the actual contract is what you have in the council packet that I have in my hand from last year. You'll see this moving forward at the council meeting. And like I said, keep this here if you have any questions.
I make a motion to approve the PC and Cell agreement.
Second that.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mayor Mark, can you say yours again, Mayor Mark?
Yes, sir.
That was an aye. Yep.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to the presentation of the 2023 audit. Judy?
All right, so just to do some introductions here before we get started. So tonight we have Brett Nelson. He is via Zoom up in your left-hand corner up there. And he will be presenting to you information or highlights of our 2023 budget. All of you should have been sent a PDF with the actual finance committee agenda itself. And then also under separate cover, you were sent the complete audit that would have looked like this. And then there's a management audit communication that looked like this. So these were sent under separate cover. Nicole sent those out last week. So again, if you had time to review those and have any questions of Brent or myself, also after he goes through his presentation, just to give you a little background of the audit. I know many of you have been through this before, but just in case, The audit is, obviously, December is our year end. We are calendar year audit. And then the audit firm of Johnson Block comes in at March timeline. And we do some audit information back and forth before then. They come in for a day, and then we're able to communicate with them on a one-on-one basis. He has, along with himself, being the partner, the audit partner within the firm, has 2 or 3 other CPAs or accountants within the firm that help him through the process. And then we work our way through lots of questions and lots of information from March until about last month when Brent finally puts together the final product. And so that's what he will be presenting to you tonight. So Brent, you can go ahead and present the audit.
Thanks, Judy.
You're welcome.
Brent Nelson, Johnson Block audit partner. Yeah, and I looked it up, Judy. We were on site the last week of March. I think it was March 28th, but we always make a point to come in March because there's that annual report you have to submit to the Department of Revenue by May 15th. So we generally come in late March or early April to take a look at the numbers before everything gets submitted. So yeah, tonight I saw in the packet was the PowerPoint summary. I'm going to focus on that tonight. I do have a electronic copy of the full 90+ page audit report if there's any questions on the specifics, but I was going to keep it pretty high level tonight. Concentrate on the highlights, the major swings, things of note in 2023. So I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully that's coming through, but yeah, it was in the board packet as well. Yep, reporting on the year ended December 31st, 2023. Just a quick overview. So we've completed the audit. You know, before we went final with everything, a draft was sent out that management had a chance to review and approve and make comments. So before we went final with everything, we sent out a draft report, and then our final submission was in July, the final audit report. And we issued in our audit opinion, we issued unmodified opinions. So that's a good thing. So nothing came to our attention to require us to modify our opinion. So in all material respects, we believe the audited financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. One thing I always bring up is that ever since I've been involved, the water and electric utility has always been audited by a separate auditing firm, but we capture their audited balances in our audit because our report is citywide. So we do capture that activity in our audit, but we reference they're the ones expressing the audit opinion on it, but we do capture it in our report. In addition, and Judy mentioned it, there is a separate audit communication document that we're required to issue in conjunction with the audit. It's a lot of standard communications, so I invite you to read through it. It goes through significant estimates, significant risks, and then any new accounting pronouncements that are on the horizon for management to think about. So, but I wasn't going to get too much into that tonight. One thing of note for 2022, we had to do a single audit, which is an additional compliance audit. There was a lot of federal money flowing through the city in 2022 with some CDBG grants. So those had kind of wrapped up in 2022. So we didn't have to do that. Luckily, or kind of nice to avoid having to do that. We don't have to do single audits very often for the city, and we were able to avoid that this year. But 22, with all the federal money, was over the threshold. Just some highlights. So the governmental funds, overall, the city has numerous different self-sustaining, self-balancing funds. Overall, across all the governmental funds, so this would exclude the utilities, electric and water, wastewater, but your general fund, your capital projects, TIF districts. Looking at those in total, overall increase in fund balance was about 1.1 million. just looking at that at the fund level, individual fund level, general fund for 2023 decreased approximately 90,000. Capital projects fund increased about 490,000. Specifically with the capital projects fund, more funds were set aside into reserve by the city council. So that plays general fund and capital project funds work in tandem with each other, because the general fund will oftentimes transfer significant amounts of money over to the capital projects fund. And we'll look at that a little bit later. Library and museum fund has been a notable fund in recent years, was just with all the fundraising going on, increase in fund balance of about 107,000 there. And then the TIF district number 5, which had a significant amount of activity going on in 2023, it had an increase in fund balance of 522,000. The biggest driver of that was there was a big borrowing that happened in the first part of 2023 last year. So at the beginning of 2023, TIF district number 5 was in a deficit position. It had been incurring significant costs, but then when the borrowing incurred in 2023, was able to recoup those costs, and then at the end of 2023 is back in the black, showing a positive fund balance.
And just so you know, TID 5 is our downtown, that area down there.
Debt service fund, one other notable fund, it increased about almost 100,000. So there's been some reserves building up in that debt service fund. So, but those are the notable funds. There's other smaller funds as well, but those were the ones that really stuck out as driving at that overall increase in fund balance of 1.1 million. As far as comparing budget to actual, in the general fund on an overall basis, actual revenues exceeded budgeted revenues, and actual expenditures were less than budgeted expenditures. So just comparing actual results to the budget, it was positive. The electric and water utility for 2023 showed an increase in net position of a little over $1.1 million. And like I said, we don't audit that. We look at it. We make sure everything's consistent with the rest of our, the city funds and the wastewater utility. But yeah, a good net income in that utility in 2023. And likewise with the sewer utility had a large increase in net position of over $1.2 million. So positive increase there. The sewer utility I'll mention a little bit skewing, or not a little bit, a big part of that increase in net position. So when all those improvements have been done in TIF district number 5, there's a lot of sewer utility assets, your sewer mains or sewer laterals getting installed in conjunction with that project. So when that happens, yes, it's a TIF district number 5 expense. We charge it there. But since it's a sewer utility asset, we have to record those assets in the sewer utility. So there's a kind of basically a one-time increase in one-time revenue for saying TIF district number 5 installed a bunch of assets for us that we didn't have to pay all for. So that was a big driver of this $1.2 million that I'll mention. Excluding the TIF district number 5 revenues, the net income, and I don't have this, but the sewer utility had a net income of closer to 582,000. If we throw those out, exclude those from our consideration, about $582,000 profit. So still a strong year in the sewer utility.
And you won't see that kind of net asset increase again in 24, but once we go through Oshkosh Street, we will see something similar in 2025.
And then this slide 4, I like to hone in on specifically the general fund balance and how that's trended over the last 5 years. So as you can see, it's been steady, relatively flat over the past 5 years. At the end of 2023, ending general fund balance of about 6.4 million. So basically right in the middle of where it's trended the last 5 years. So it's been relatively flat the last 5 years. The city has a fund balance policy where it wants its unassigned fund balance. So of that 6.4 million of fund balance, there's different classifications. Some of that is earmarked for specific purposes, if it's restricted or assigned to be used for a specific reason. So of that 6.4 million, about 3.5 million is what we classify as unassigned, discretionary, more discretionary in nature. And there's a ratio we do. We take unassigned fund balance divided by annual expenditures, and that calculates to a ratio of 47%. And we compare that to the city policy, and the city's minimum, where it wants its minimum unassigned fund balance to be at a level of 25%. So, well over the city as of December 31st, 23 was well above that threshold. Looking at the revenues of the general fund, I'm not going to dig too much into this slide. I'll point out a couple big swings, but 3-year trend, you can see the top line taxes. So taxes and your intergovernmental revenues, so that'd be revenue from the state predominantly, your shared revenues from the state, but taxes and intergovernmental revenues from the state or federal government make up 85% of the city's general fund revenues. And you can see that taxes in the general fund has been increased slightly over the years, which you'd expect, for inflation to go up somewhat. Intergovernmental revenues went up over the prior years. There was more state highway aid that was allocated to the general fund. Some of that the city splits off to the capital projects fund. So that was a big reason why the intergovernmental revenues went up in 2023. And then I thought I'd point out the interest income or loss. So for 2022, the markets didn't perform very well. But then in 2023, we saw the markets perform very well. So, and we'll see what 2024 brings, because that's fluctuating as we speak. But those are a couple notable things for revenues over the last couple of years in the general fund. And then looking at general fund expenses, so the state of Wisconsin requires expenses to be classified into the main categories of general government, public safety, public works, categories like that. The biggest expenditure function of the city is public safety, so police, fire, and then general government. So overall, not too much fluctuations in the general fund. The one notable fluctuation was with these transfers. And that's where the general fund is taking its fund balance and transferring those to other funds. So in 2021 and 22, general fund transfers out were about 450,000. And we did see that big uptick in transfers out in 2023. So big transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund of approximately 877,000 during 2023. Just a couple more slides. Slide 7. This is the long-term debt of the city, what it has outstanding. So beginning of the year, so January 1st, 2023, end of the year, December 31st. There was the big borrowing I referenced in the first half of 2023 of almost $3.4 million. The big chunk of that, the biggest piece of that was TIF District number 5. So of that amount, there was almost $2.5 million issued to finance those TIF District number 5 projects, with the rest of that going to the capital projects fund. So governmental activities would be your general fund, your TIF districts. Business type would be your utilities. And the utility had a $1 million borrowing in an anticipation loan, which maybe it has already. We'll get financed into a long-term debt issuance here in the next year or two if it hasn't already happened. But overall, the utility debt went down between years. So about 15.7 million down to about 15.4. The state of Wisconsin has a debt limitation, how much debt they allow a city, a village, a municipality to issue. And that's specific to general obligation debt, so secured by the taxing power of the city. So the debt limit per state statutes is $26.4 million in 2023. Comparing that to what the city has issued in debt of about 12.5 million. So there is capacity that if a need did arise, the city could issue more general obligation debt and still be in alignment with state statutes. And then just last slide, just to kind of recap some conclusions, but overall city has a healthy fund balance, borrowing capacity. So I feel like the city's in a good spot as of December 31st, 2023. And like Judy said, so we were on site in December, for our December field work or December audit, we were on site the last week of March, but we do a lot of work anymore remotely. So we appreciate city staff sends us so much information ahead of time. And then after the fact, they upload us documents. So it's received full cooperation throughout the process. Any questions on any of that information?
Any questions on anything for 23? I guess just kind of as a highlight, I feel like the city came, out of the year 2023 in very much the same light or almost the same capacity as far as having fund balances remaining almost the same. We've increased our capital projects fund. And then we also worked very hard on 3 TID districts. As you know, I provided you with that information about our TID districts. In fact, Brent sent an email to us before we got here tonight, and he had looked at the value that our TID district had increased from year to year, and he's like, wow, your TID districts are exploding with value for the next year. So there's a lot of work that still needs to go in those TID districts, but we got our feet on the ground, and we're moving forward with all of that during 2023. And in 2024, we continue that process. Now, like Brent had noticed, there's a lot more value in there and a lot of other work that needs to be done contractually for us to fulfill our obligations within those districts with our original project plan and where things are going to go from here. So I think it was a very positive year, and the city should be proud of themselves about how much they have done financially within that year and able to come out almost in the same financial position as they were the year before. I always feel like if we can take a look at ourselves and say, yep, the fund balance is still looking good, and our capital fund, projects fund is still looking like we have the dollars to be able to move forward. We're not, wealthy by any means, but I feel like we're doing a good job just continuing forward and maintaining. And I just hope that we can continue working hard and getting things moving forward in the future. So,
yeah, is it unassigned fund balance? Is that what's significant when we go out for bonding?
I'm sorry?
The unassigned fund balance, is that significant when we go out for bonding?
Well, it is one of the things when the bonding agency looks at us for interest rates. They want to know, what does that capacity look like as it relates to our equalized value. So it's 5% of equalized value is the capacity that the state puts on jurisdictions. So if we're getting, knocking on higher percentages, we're at 53% now, but we'll pay down some of that debt. And so you have to look at that too. So this year, 24, we'll pay down some of that debt. Yes, we'll go into 25 knowing, and we're already working on that and talking to Harry about what that debt service is going to look like. So then what is the capacity of that debt service, knowing that we have to go to a bonding, to be rated within that bonding to make sure that our interest rates are being the best interest rates that we can get for our city. So I guess we kind of looked at it, and I think that Ellers was at, I can't remember if it's 70% or 65% or something like that. They're saying, at some point, your rating agency is going to say your capacity is starting to get tight, and then they're going to look at you as not as a good investment, or the investors aren't going to look at you as a good investment. So it is an overall package when you are looking at debt. You can't just look at debt and look at 5% of equalized value and say we can, take out as much debt up to that capacity. There's a lot of other things that go into that when we're looking at going into debt. So, and what that is that debt for? I mean, I think when you're looking at streets, that's one thing. But when you're looking at what is that debt actually going to go for? It's the way that the investors would view what those investments look like also. Anything to add to that, Brent?
Yeah, if the city's unassigned fund balance as a ratio of annual expenditures was say 20% or less, instead of where it's at 47, I think that would definitely play into a future bond rating, and impact interest rates that the city would be able to get. So I think when the bond raters look at it, that would be viewed as a positive where the city's at.
Thank you.
And I also think that at this point, with our unassigned fund balance, as healthy as it is, I also don't think it's healthy to continue building it continuously over years just to have a bigger fund balance. So there's a fine line between what should that fund balance look like, what should you be moving over to capital. I just think it's a really nice policy for us because we're in such a good shape within that fund balance to be able to utilize those dollars and move them over from year to year. As you can see, there was a very large movement again from the general fund over the capital projects fund. But I think we all agree that that's where we would like those dollars to be spent, is if there are extra dollars or money within that fund that we would like to see them utilized for even some of the smaller equipment so that we're paying cash for it. When you need a snowplow or you need a new mower, that those dollars are being moved over and spent and not being bonded for. So I think it's a good way to utilize those dollars and not just to continue to build on a side fund balance either. Any other questions of Brent? Myself?
All right, yeah, I didn't have anything else to add.
You good? All right.
All right, appreciate.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, Brent.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Take care.
Have a great night. You too.
All right, moving on to the financial reports, Judy.
All right, so when presenting the financial reports tonight, we are actually halfway through the year. The city is actually halfway through the year when it comes to financial information. So we were looking at June. So we would anticipate those to be at about 50%. So here's our expenditure side. The only ones that are up is insurance. And again, that's all paid in January. This will even out over time. In fact, myself and Stephanie bill the utility for their portion of insurance, and that gets put right back into this account. So it will drop in the next couple months here once that payment is made. The equipment replacement, we expect, I think it's like 700,000, 807. Here's what he talks about when he talks about money movement from general fund to capital. So we budget for 250, but we know we have dollars set aside in our capital fund to pay the difference. So there's another $200,000 anticipating being spent within that fund. Our equipment maintenance continues to be something that is a red flag to me. I did send out another email today and did some research on that one in particular, and where is that money being spent, or where does it look different than previous years? So I did send an email. I found something that looked different than it has in the past, and that is always something that you need to investigate. So the individuals that I know can answer those questions for me I sent them an email today, so we'll get together and talk about that. In fact, I think something might be in there that doesn't belong in there. So I found a $5,000 expenditure in there, and I'm just questioning, is that really where that proper, should be placed? Because a lot of people put account numbers on invoices as they come through, and we all make mistakes. So it's just, sometimes it's as simple as one digit, and you just put a 300 instead of a 400, and then it just gets put in the wrong place. So did my due diligence, looked into that, and hopefully we'll find that that actually belongs in equipment is where I'm thinking, and not in maintenance. So I'll continue to look at that. And the other reason debt service is up is because, or at 81, is because we paid almost all of it. We don't expect to go over in that area either. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know Brent did talk about the lion's share of our dollars here at the city do go into public safety. And then he talked about police, fire, and then also included in that is ambulance, just so you know. And then maybe just a time for you to see or look at. So we spend almost 2.6 million. When he talked about that, sometimes as an auditor, you see communities, and fire is also a very large portion of that. Not here at the city of New London. Most of that expenditure is at our police department. And then about 100,000 is ambulance. So that's public safety in the eyes of this diagram.
So those new leasing contracts for those four Explorers you got, was that then goes into the equipment replacement then?
Those would be
Those
going,
contracts?
you are correct. Yep. So one of my questions before that approval of the leases was to the auditors, is this an expenditure, an operational expenditure to the city? Or am I allowed to put that under equipment replacement as a capital line item? He said you are allowed to put those and mark those as equipment replacement under the capital. So when we also approved them, that was at the capital projects meetings, capital projects as a whole. So those were actually listed on the capital project schedule, not within the operational budget itself. So every year now you will see those on there as whatever that lease is going to look like in that year. And we'll get smarter about that as time goes on. Because I know there's still, I did not get to see the presentation or get time to take a look at it. I will. But they do a very strange thing. So they take the money from the sale of those vehicles and then they reduce the lease payments over time. So I thought it was going to come to me. So I'm looking all over for the, like, how much do these cost and what did it look like? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to get that. And then there's also one vehicle that has not been sold as far as I know yet.
Correct.
So we'll see that settle down and should settle into a pattern before we meet in December for our capital projects meeting. I'm thinking or hoping that gets sold. So then we'll know for sure or more positively what those dollars will look like for our capital side. Did I answer your question?
Yep, it's coming out of capital.
Mhm.
Yep. I watched the meeting on Monday or whatever with Robert's report or whatever. It's like $750 a month or something like that for each vehicle. So $3,000 a month.
Something
That
like that.
lease
Yep.
agreement. So I just wondered where it was coming from. So answer my
Okay.
question.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on to the revenue side. I have my little tabby out.
No tab. Here, let me help you.
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, and then on the revenue side, I don't see any of these line items that I would anticipate coming under budget. Anytime you see a negative on this side, that's actually more money than we anticipated over here, these negatives. Sorry, I'll lose my voice. And then here is the interest. And I would expect next month already, we're gonna be in the negative, as I looked at my LGIP account today in the local government. The local government. LGIP, why is it not coming to me? Anyway, the state fund that we hold most of our dollars in our shared, what I was looking for is our shared revenue came in. And we have like $8,000 sitting there for interest for July. So I would anticipate that to go in the negative next month. So again, we've received some of this shared revenue, we'll see that come in there next month. Our taxes will be collected in full in August, so we'll see that come up to 100%. And at this time, I don't see anything that will not be again negative at the end of the day in revenue. And then we have assigned and unassigned fund balance. And the only thing that I made a change on or in is the downtown facade. We had one more of those go out, so that's still a very healthy balance there in downtown facade economic development of 147,000. But otherwise, I update a lot of this at the end of the year when we go through our year-end assigned fund balance in February. So I think that's it. I think we got a little bit more money from the cross too. The police department here, Bob Pulaski. There was a final payment that came in for that, for the police department donated funds. Made that adjustment. And that's it. There's our unassigned fund balance that the auditor was talking about. And then we go into wheel tax, and we collected 45,000. We used 41,000 for House Alcon Road engineering, so we're still in the positive. But along with our assigned fund balance, we're at 137. We anticipate using some of that for the Wolf River development. Actually, I think some of that has been spent. And then the North Street. And that's where the grant was received, and that's the matching dollars for that project. It's a nice place to be able to apply for grants and then not worry that you have the money, because a lot of those grants will pop up after we actually set a budget. So to have this money sitting aside and know that you can apply for a grant and say, you know, if it's a capital grant, that we can take it out of this fund is actually, it's very helpful. All right, then we have the bonding schedule, and this is what he was talking about with the $3.3 million. I actually have those all listed out for you here, and what we had anticipated using those dollars for. So that was what he was talking about with that $3.385 million bonding that we took out last year in 2023. We have about $1 million left, and 500 of that is actually library donation. And we will hold on to that as long as we can, so we can receive those interest dollars. I would anticipate giving that to them once bills start flowing through, and we'll just pay the first $500,000 on the city funds.
So when we bond for the like say the library donation, and then we sit on the money and we collect interest on it, I mean, are you breaking even because you're collecting interest on? You know what I'm saying? Like you bonded for it, so it's costing, right? And then you're collecting interest on it.
We're probably gaining on it.
Oh,
right
okay.
now,
Cool.
because we're getting 5% in there, and I believe our bonding was closer to 4%. So
That's
there's
cool.
about
That's coming to an end, the 5% though. Feds are already, looks like it's gonna be 4 something.
I was just wondering if the library is being pushed out another year or so, if that was gonna affect anything.
We'll just hold on to it and wait.
More interest.
It's been, it'll be earmarked for them. Eventually what I'll do is I may add it to our assigned fund balance in our list. And so this will be, you know, we can get rid of our bonding schedule, and then we'll just assign $500,000 to the library. In fact, what I may do, because we have to spend money out of the bonding, that gives you X amount of years. What I may do is use the $500,000 for a capital item and then put the assigned fund up. That's all my problem. Sorry. I don't want to confuse you, but because we have to do certain things to comply with the bond is how I should put it. I might have to do some, you know, say that we've spent the $500,000 in a project, and let's say Oshkosh Street, and then I'll assign $500,000 to the library. It's really, when you put the verbiage in a bond, you're able to take dollars and move them if you need to, because the verbiage is street project, or, you know, this project or that project. It's not specific to any street. What it'll just say is a street project. As long as you're putting it in a street project, they're gonna be happy.
But they're not gonna be able to touch that 500,000 until they start with the project, right?
Yep. That's what I had indicated to him, that we're gonna hold tight of the $500,000 until that project gets started. All right, then I guess I have my finance director's report. And it's not. Yes, please. I have it in front of me, but maybe it didn't get put on there.
No,
It wasn't on there.
It wasn't?
no. Do
Oh,
you have a verbal one?
all right. All right, so I had to do so as part of the audit, the first like 20 pages is a management discussion and analysis portion of the audit. There's a lot of people in our office who are part of that. Chad has part of it that he needs to complete. Basically, it's talking about the city and what we did in layman's terms. So the average bear who wants to say, hey, what's going on in the city? We'll look at the management discussion and analysis portion of the audit. And it's meant for the average reader to be able to look at it and say, oh, that's what the city of New London was up to in 23. They started the project downtown, they put in a trail. We talk about all the things that happen within the city in the year, and they can read it. Also has pie graphs, so they can take a look at pie graphs and where's the city gets the money from, did they expense more than they were supposed to, did they take in more revenues, less revenues, and all those kind of things. But it shows them in pictures and words, so that it allows for the average reader to be able to look at the city if they want to, because sometimes, just remember, there's people investing in our city. When we go out to bonding, there's people that are looking at our city and saying, do we want to buy and invest in the city of New London, or do we not? And they don't want to go through that whole entire audit. Sometimes they're looking at those pages and deciding, oh yeah, they have a lot going on in that city, and I trust that they're going to be able to pay their debt back. So let's see, there's a video service provider report that's due to the state in early August. I finished that. That's so we can get our cable dollars in. Made changes and completed the municipal property insurance renewal. PIC, and that's on our buildings. Reviewed the information for the amendment to TID 5 and the newly board TID 7. Had our initial joint review board meeting. And went through those project plans. Both of those TIDs are still going through the process for approval, just so you know. That was not an approval process, just reviewing of the original project plans. Completed the 25 budget memo. April and I finished those packets, and those were sent out to the department heads. Big job they gotta get done in the next 30 days to be presented to you in September. So you'll all be seeing those departments come in with their 25 budget starting here in September. Chad, Stephanie, and I, along with Jason and Missy from the utility, we met with the health insurance consultant. We're still going through what that renewal will look like. She said 12%, but we think that we can possibly make that maybe in half is what we're thinking. We can take a look at that and then do some other things, hopefully, to bring that down for the city's side. I attended a CIVMIC summer meeting. That's our insurance company, and participated in roundtable discussion as a board member. I received our estimated insurance renewals for 2025, and they're looking pretty good. There wasn't quite the large increase. I think our biggest increase was from 23 to 24, and hopefully now we're starting to see that settle down a little bit. I put together the billings for the utilities. I talked about that for the insurance so that we get those dollars back in. And then we actually had some training within this office, or in this room right here, for some anti-harassment training for full-time employees. And that's what was happening in the HR world. So just some of the highlights that are completed in July. Any questions on any of that?
I see that you do a lot of stuff with the CIVMIC. I was just wondering, is that a volunteer position or is that a paid position?
It's not paid.
Okay. Does the city get anything for all the work you do for them?
Actually, they pay for, so I am elected by the members of, so there's 57 municipalities that own this insurance company. So we actually own a portion of CIVMIC. What happens is that their annual meeting actually coming up in October, they look at the owners of the company to participate on the council. It's a privilege among the people that go to those meetings to be elected onto that board. So I was elected by my peers to sit on that board. And we do a lot of the same things that you guys do here. So I look at their budget and approve their budget. What does insurance look like? Our biggest meetings to date, what we're talking about now is cybersecurity. So I get in the weeds of all of those kinds of things and discussions about that. I think it's really important that we have a voice at that table. Like I said, we're an owner within that organization. So, and I honestly enjoy it. It does not cost our city a dime. So anytime I go to a board meeting, which I participate in most of them via Zoom, so right at my desk, every single month we meet and we talk about hot topics, and it takes me about an hour. So from 11 to 12 once a month, we meet via Zoom. Then about every quarter, we will meet in person, and that's an entire day. And then we're talking, and our agendas are very full. They know that we have a lot to do in our communities. So along with all of the other board members, actually there's 6 other board members, we sit down and we just discuss what's going on in the insurance industry. They do send me out of state once a year, and we go to what's called an AGRIP conference, and I don't think it'd be like Association of Government Risk Pools. And we talk about, because it is a pool, so it's a pool of municipalities that get together and we pool our resources to be able to flatten out our insurance so that we're not continually paying higher and higher premiums. Because as you know, municipalities, we need to keep it. Appleton's actually one of the members of CIVMIC. Where was I going with it? Oh, so they do send me out of state once a year, but all of that is funded through CIVMIC. So the city does give me the time off to go. As you know, in about March, I'll say I can't make the finance meeting. I want, I'm participating in the CIVMIC meeting out of state. But it does not cost us anything except I think I'm out like 4 days for that actual conference. And I enjoy the position very much. It's very nice to get out with other colleagues. I think 2 of us are CPAs, 2 of us are attorneys. So you're at a very high level when you're sitting on that board and discussing the things that that are important in the insurance industry. So I appreciate that you let me participate as a board member. I'm going to try again. My term is actually up. So I would love to be able to participate in that. It's a 2-year term. And again, in October, I would like to try to sit on that board. And I'm thinking a couple more terms and then I'll step back and let somebody else take over. But I've been on, so I think it's been 6 years, and the average is about 10. So I'd like to sit about 10 and then let somebody else. But again, I have to be elected. I can't just go there and assume that I'm going to be on the board. I'm going to try, and if I am, I certainly appreciate the time that the city allows me to do that. Yes, it is another pressure, but I think it's a good thing for us to keep ourselves at that table if we can.
I think one of the biggest things that the city, all of us guys and everybody should be proud of is the way we've made our vehicle maintenance has went up in the last 5 to 6 years. It used to be our trucks were pieces of junk and stuff around, and I know there's a lot of money being spent in it, but it's well worth it, and people look at that too, how we're maintaining our vehicles. So that's very important. And I think everybody around here should get a pat on the back for people don't realize when they see these new trucks, they think, look at the guys driving all these new trucks. Hey, you're saving money in the long run, and vehicle maintenance was way lacking in this town for years.
I think, now more than ever, because we've seen a lot of those parts, as we know, when we look at the maintenance, we've seen a lot of those parts for maintenance escalate. They're almost twice what they used to be. So I think had we not started the process of moving the dollars to be able to pay for the equipment, we would see that, we'd probably see double in that maintenance account today, that it would have skyrocketed on us.
I know being on council as long as I have, when I first came on, there was a lot of trucks that were, the maintenance, there was no money being spent. It was terrible. And it's just gotten better in the last few years. So that's great to see that.
Any other questions? If not, I look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?